Hey guys, Jengar here. Welcome to today's realistic review in which we are taking a look at the American P-51D-5 sitting at 4.3 battle rating in rank 4. Yes, I have already started to collect footage from rank 4. The rank 3 footage collection is done. I am working on the clips, editing them, and then we'll add the audio and yeah, I know the final edit of rank 3 is almost done, and working on rank 4 and starting with the Mustangs. And the Mustang is a plane that you might start this game for. You know, everybody has a love, and the Mustangs are definitely up there with planes that people desire to have when they start this game. Like, I really want to fly a Mustang because my grandfather flew it, or somebody like me who had a model of a P-51, and I grew up with the tales of the P-51s. The Mustangs were one of the most important planes in America, winning the war against Germany and stuff like that. Of course, I didn't realize at the time yet that it was for a big part the Soviet Union that defeated the Germans on the Eastern Front, a meat grinder for the Germans. But hey, I mean, the Western powers definitely helped in bringing a second front, even though they took longer than Stalin would have wanted. But that's all historical background. I mean, this Mustang was a fantastic fighter that had a big impact on the war, and it is a lovely plane to look at. The canopy P-51Ds are absolutely amazing, but they are boom and zoomers. And in reality they were absolutely fantastic because they could fly from England, take the time to get the altitude and catch up with the bombers, and then attack German planes that came up from their airfields to attack the bombers. In the game though, it is not really meta friendly, is it, the P-51? It is not a great climber, although it's not super bad, but it is a boom and zoomer that needs its time to set up. It's not one of the fastest climbers out there, and with the 25-minute change a couple of years ago, the meta was already a little bit, for fast climbers and planes good at that. But you still had the time to climb up to altitude back in those days, and you still had the time to have a carry or a reversal match where your team was half decimated and you managed to turn it around. That was all still very possible to do on a regular basis. These days it's harder. It's more advisable in this plane to fly with a squad. As you saw, I had some high flyers from my squad there, and they were occupying the higher planes, and then I could take out a couple of planes on lower altitude and then mix into the fight against those high flyers, being pulled down by my squad mates. And but you don't always have that luxury. I also flew it alone, and when you fly it alone you have to calculate for those high flyers on the enemy team, and you have to keep side climbing quite a bit to the side so they can't spot you, to get to the altitude that this plane needs to start to function, because this plane needs to be on altitude, needs to be fast, and from there it can start to boom and zoom, which it's absolutely good at. But yeah man, it takes a bit to get this plane into position. That is definitely true. Still fun to fly, and I would still recommend getting a taste of the Mustangs to see if it's for your liking, but do realize that it's not meta friendly, and it takes a long time to set them up, so you do need patience in this plane. Now, that being said, before we get into the details of the plane, I would appreciate it if you would like the video. If you do enjoy it, leave me a comment. That interaction is very important for the video's performance. Share if you would love to do that, and of course, if you haven't subscribed yet, do subscribe. The channel will have more content upcoming that might be to your liking, so you won't miss anything. Also, if you want to further support me on Locals and Rumble, I would appreciate that as well. So guys, this plane, the maximum speed in this plane at sea level without WEP is 568 kilometers an hour at sea level, and 588 with WEP. Then at 4,500 meters she'll go up to 520 kilometers an hour without WEP, and 525 with. And finally at 6,500 meters she'll take you to 476 without WEP and 488 with. Now these speeds are in indicated airspeed without Mach. This is quite a fast plane. that especially on the deck and let's say below 5,000 meters is very fast in a straight line. Even on the higher altitudes she's still quite good, although this one does not have the fantastic performing high altitude engine yet. But it still does well enough. You just don't get the web boost on the lower altitudes. Sorry, on the higher altitudes, and on the lower altitudes it's not that great yet either. The D5 does not have the greatest engine in the world. It's not bad or anything, but the performance-wise, when you compare it to a lot of the other 4.3 planes, she lacks a bit in performance. And although she's fast, because of the wing design, because of the lack of drag on this plane, she does quite well in speed, in the speed department, but in the vertical and in some acceleration and stuff like that, she does less well than some of the planes you might be facing. Now the top speed in the dive is quite nice, 812 before she redlines and 900 plus before she rips apart in a dive. That is jet speeds, which is quite awesome. Control stiffening in the aileron starts to improve from, let's say, 250, 300, and it keeps improving to about 600 kilometers an hour, where it starts to slack off again. Then you get the compression in the ailerons, 600, and in 750 small ticks it becomes worse there. But this plane has a sweet window between 300 and 600 kilometers an hour, where she becomes better and better in the roll rate. Now the closer to 600 you'll get, let's say 500, 550, she's really good. And after 300, 350 she's decent, and she goes to good. So in the roll rate she improves with speed until the speeds I mentioned, and then she starts to slack off and have some compression in there. Stall speed in the plane is 125, which is not good. She is a bit wobbly when she's slow and when she's stalling, so she doesn't handle very well there. The firepower is good. You have 6 12.7mm M2 Browning machine guns. The inner pair have 500 rounds per gun, and the two outer pairs have 270 rounds per gun. So that 270 is good, and the 500 rounds per gun is excellent. Only the firepower isn't good anymore when you're running with those last two pair, with that last pair with the 500 rounds per gun. That's just 250 cals, and it doesn't have a lot of stopping power, let's say. I would recommend using the universal belt, which is what I use. I like very much the amount of incendiary in there. It has two APIs, armor piercing incendiaries. It has one API T round, which is an armor piercing incendiary tracer shell, and it has two incendiary shells. But I have to say that pretty much every belt is viable to use. The default belt has an API T shell, then two armor piercing shells and one incendiary shell. So default is more suited for vehicle attack, ground attack. The ground belt also has a lot of armor piercing incendiary tracer shell, incendiary, two AP shells and two API shells. The tracer belt is filled with API T shells, and the stealth belt is 50% API and 50% incendiary. So lots of incendiary shells, you will get lots of fires, and in these days you know that the fires are not sacred. People go after planes on fire, so you have to make sure to finish your target and get them. But all these belts, none of them has ball ammo, none of them has practice ammunition, none of that stuff. This is just all good shells in those belts. Just depends on what you prefer. I would say universal and stealth, but I heard people say tracers as well, or ground belt, so there's mixed opinions there. Now you can also equip this plane with bombs, rockets and combos of that, so she can be used for ground attack as well, which makes it viable for naval and for ground RB, which is good. The performance in the plane, the acceleration in a straight line is decent. In a dive it's good, although it does need to speed up a little bit. She is not initially very fast in acceleration, but once she speeds up she is. Energy retention in the horizontal is great. In the vertical it is good, not fantastic, but because of the lack of drag she's not half bad there, but she does suffer a little bit in the vertical. Climb rate in the plane is decent to good. She can get up there, she just needs time. It's not an excellent climber, not a great climber, not very good. It's decent to good. Turn time in the plane is average, decent with flaps. I forgot to put down the flap speed, that's nice. Well, I have to figure that out. It's probably somewhere in the 400 or 500 range, but I haven't checked it, so stupid, but there it is. I just saw that. Roll rate in the plane is average to decent. It does roll off center from 500 kilometers an hour onwards, so you got to keep that in mind, and it is difficult. It's a rudder problem, and you got to keep it in mind when you're in the high speed dive. When you roll, you can pull off center and thus off target, so keep that in mind. Don't roll too much as you get on final approach to the target. Maneuverability is average to decent. There is overheating in the plane, it's actually quite bad. When you go 100%, eventually it will go there, and especially when you climb, when you're a little bit slower, it goes even faster. It does cool off, but you need to go below 100% and fly it at 90% for it to cool off pretty fast. Durability is average. It doesn't fly well with damage. When you get damage on a wing, you notice it immediately in the flight model. Not all American planes have this. Some are quite good with damage, but this one isn't. It can take quite a bit of damage, but she doesn't fly very well anymore, so you do notice it immediately. That's why I would say average. Repair cost is 5,279 Silver Lions. Which is a high repair cost. It's below average for sure. The rewards in the plane: you have a 320% research point modifier and a 315% Silver Lion modifier, and then you have multipliers on that, a 1.6 on the research points and a 2.1 on the Silver Lions. Overall, that gives you a RP reward that is average and a Silver Lion reward that is decent to good. So that's alright. Not necessarily the best for unlocking the tree, but quite good for earning Silver Lions. As I said, this is a boom and zoomer. You are gonna have to take the time to set her up, and in the current meta that just isn't ideal. You need a fast climber in the current meta to get up there quickly, and then you have the rest of the match to wreak havoc. This plane though, it does need 5 to 8 minutes of side climbing depending on the map, and she is very disadvantaged on the smaller maps and on the medium maps, where you're just gonna miss out on a lot of the match to side climb, and to make sure that you're the highest plane. She absolutely needs that. If you don't do that, she will not function as she should. You will be below 190, she will be below 109s, Spitfires, you know, you name it, and Yaks definitely above you. You need that side climb, and if you get those planes above you and they see you, you're in a world of hurt in this plane, unfortunately. So she can function very nicely as a boom and zoomer, even with that rolling off center at a certain point. But you need to be patient in this plane, and you need to take the time to make the Mustang work. It can still be done, even in these terrible times, for boom and zoomers. Yeah, because that's what it is. It is not the greatest of times for these planes, but yeah, she can still be made to work. You can do that either through squad, so that you can stay on a lower altitude and do your damage there, while your teammates work the higher grounds. Or you can do that alone by taking the time to side climb and to you know, accept the fact that you will only have half a match to do your damage. But you have to do that, because coming from altitude in this plane, you can still make a lot of difference you know, a lot of damage you can do to the enemy team at the end of the match as well, when there's especially when there's more enemies left compared to your teammates. You can make the difference still in this plane. But you will have those matches where you know, the battle is over before you get any chance of a kill. So that is the frustration in this plane at this moment. She can also energy fight a little bit, but let's look at the rewards as well. The best quad, Terror of the Sky, bulletproof, 47,000 Silver Lions and 10,000 research points. I'll see you in the conclusion. Hey guys, so here we are after the match. The P-51D-5 is not the best Mustang, that's for sure. She is an early D that has problems in the vertical. She's just not great in the performance overall yet, and it's a boom and zoomer that doesn't fit the meta. You need time to side climb, or you need a team to support you. Although of course you can fly it alone, as I said, but then you need that patience, then you need that side climbing, taking your time to get the plane in the right place. Once you do get it into place, you can still do very, very well in this plane. I mean, I flew it with squad, I flew it without squad, I did fine in this plane. I think I got like 4 deaths and 34 kills in it. And I mean, that is fine. That is above my average. This plane can do good for you. But as I said, you need the time, you need the patience, and you need to, despite the meta, set this plane up right to make her perform. If you do that, the Mustang performance coming from altitude, boom and zooming your way down, can still be a magnificent experience and a fun thing and something to love the Mustangs for. But it can also be frustrating, and especially if you're still learning the trade, it's gonna be sometimes painful to fly the Mustangs with the 50 cals, especially with this bunch of ammo in this 2, so halfway through the ammo you will only have 2 guns, stuff like that. You will miss a lot of targets. It can be frustrating in the D5, and thus it can also be disappointing if you're just starting the game and your aim was to get the Mustang and you have the experience of the D5. It can be disappointing. And that's why I made this video, to bring you up to speed and to, you know, impress you with the thought that you have to be patient, you have to side climb, you're fighting against the meta as well in this plane. But if you get her up there and you're the or one of the highest planes and you can start boom and zooming from there, this plane is still a force to be reckoned with. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. I want to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye. If you're new here, make sure to hit the subscribe button, become part of this community. If you are already a subscriber, don't forget to like the video, do leave me a comment, and if you really feel like helping out today, make sure to share the video with your friends and let them know about the channel.